Hey guys, I want to welcome you again to the Three Circle Podcast. Hope you're having a great summer, whatever you're doing right now. You might be on the pontoon boat, you may be on the back porch, or you may be at work or on your way. What we hope is that today's podcast somehow will bless you and bring you joy and maybe make you think a little bit. And as we always say, we want to stir your affection for Jesus because we think that's where true life is found. And on this podcast, we do a lot of things. We talk about life, theology, leadership. But one thing we always try to do is kind of draft off of the weekend message that took place the weekend before the podcast. And right now we're in the middle of the series on the life of Jacob. So that means we're in the book of Genesis, and we're walking through one of the great lives in the Bible, one of the more complex and we would say dysfunctional lives in the Old Testament, Jacob. He's one of the patriarchs. We called the series On the Run because the dude is always on the run, man. He is running from his past. He's running to, it seems, another problem that he's created. But we're going to see a transformation over the course of his life. He's going to go from running from God to running for God. That's a pretty cool thing, and I think it's all of our stories. And today on the podcast, I've got my really great friend. She's a lot like family to my wife and I. We consider her just like a sister. Her and her husband are like, my kids don't know a time in their lives when these two people were not in their lives. So it feels so important, such an important part of our lives. So we've got Brittany Hogan on the podcast today.
Hello.
Yeah, Brittany. So
Hi.
we were thinking about that the other day. We were talking to our kids, and they were like, yeah, we don't know a time in our lives without Brittany and Jonathan, your husband, in our lives, because we served in Florida, and you and Nan are such great friends. And so when you guys came over, it was so awesome. And over the years, you've worn a lot of different hats at Three Circle Church.
I have.
You started because you helped us kick off the couples marriage ministry, True Marriage.
Yes.
And we had been doing that at a church in Florida. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of right out of the gate, that was a real big hit. And then over the years, you've worn the hat of small groups. You've worn the hat of connections, all kinds of stuff. Environments, preschool.
Everything but worship leader, just about, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think that's
not in the cards.
No.
So now, and I think you've probably landed the plane right now on where you're going to be. So you're the director of children's ministries at the Fairhope campus, and then in many ways you touch all the campuses. And so we're so grateful for your leadership, and you're teaching kids every week. And I know your commitment to the gospel, your commitment to biblical and theological foundations for the kids. And so it's always good to have you on. And then your husband does so much around here, plays keys on stage.
Yep.
He's a multi-talented guy.
He is.
But he's also done these cool classes. My son got to be in one where he's just teaching them, like, because Jonathan, your husband's a great leader, very successful in the business world and the sales world, but he has a real heart to help people get financially healthy.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, he does.
And so my son really got a lot out of that, and thinks the world of Jonathan because he taught him some really cool things. So I told my son, I'm like, well, hopefully that's going to help. You get your life together, man.
If he listens to Jonathan, it should help.
It should work out.
Yeah.
All right. Now, Brittany, I got to ask you this. We got you on the podcast. People may not know this, and I would have never thought two things have happened over the past year that my wife and I have watched in y'all's lives. And it's the fact that you became a cat owner.
Yes,
yeah.
I never.
In a million years, I wouldn't have written that one up.
No, I wouldn't have either.
A kid, your son Ethan's now how old?
He's almost 9.
He's 9 years old, and a kid will kind of talk us into some stuff when you love them.
It took at least almost 2 years.
But it started. This whole thing started. It was kind of our fault, wasn't it?
It really was, yeah. You have like a neighbor cat,
A neighbor
right?
cat that actually lives in my yard.
He fell in love
Ethan
with
would come
that
over,
cat.
and I've got pictures of the first day he played with that cat. And I thought, ooh, and we joked around with you because literally we thought a million years would go by before she would get a cat.
Oh, yeah.
Now there's a cat at your house.
I know. He's outside primarily, but yes.
Primarily being a very subjective term.
He does not sleep inside. There's no litter box. So I have some standards.
What's the cat's name?
Beckham.
Oh, Beckham. So there's a cat. And then the other development in Hogan world that we've watched from a distance is this green thumb you developed.
So basically I've turned into a grandma.
So not yet, but So you got a cat, and now you're like planting stuff. So
Yeah,
you live in our neighborhood, and we'll look down there. You're out in that yard planting stuff, and
I know it has turned into something that I really
it
enjoy.
brings you great joy.
I do.
Okay. And of course, Nan and I are famous for killing stuff. Plants die at our house.
Well,
How are you doing? How are you keeping them alive?
I don't know. I think it's turned into a game almost to figure out how to keep it alive and
right.
what's the trick. And
Well,
I don't
sounds
know.
fun.
It's and because I don't know. It's just become a fun
Hobby.
and I've never really had a hobby before, and it turned out to be one that I'm decent at, and so
And it's a hobby that brings beauty to your yard.
it does.
Right?
It does, and
Multiple winners of Yard of the Month over the years.
I think only one. We're holding out for another
want
one.
one more?
We'd like that, yeah.
We would like just the first one, but it's not going to happen because I'm not good at it like you are. All right, Brittany. So diving in, we are in the middle of the Jacob series, and you have such a inside road with our families, with kids and all that. You see up close and personal. You're watching what's happening, and I think it's pretty awesome that the Bible gives us these no punches being held, not polish up the story. These lives that we get to look at and families. And we are looking at a family from Abraham on. We're watching this family grow and develop. And God has decided through the Abrahamic covenant, this is the family that's going to eventually bring us the Messiah.
Right.
But boy, they are a mess.
Oh my goodness.
Right?
Before the series started, I started back to read really the beginning until we will wrap up close to, I guess, Joseph and his story. But I'm like, oh my goodness, this is mind-blowing how awful some of these families were. And like, yeah, they did some bad stuff.
They did. And even like we're getting, because you go, I think on first glance, maybe a modern person would go, how does this ancient story apply to my life at all?
Right.
You get under the hood and you're like, my gosh, they're just humans.
Yeah.
They may be patriarchs. I mean, Jacob's a patriarch. Meaning he's one of these big towering figures that you can kind of connect dots, going to get us to Jesus one day. But he is a mess, and let's not act like Jacob's the bad apple on that tree.
Right.
Abraham himself, I mean, I look at what Abraham, when he went to Egypt, was willing to do with his beautiful wife.
Yeah. Yeah.
Send her off with Pharaoh.
I know.
Just to save his own hide.
Yeah.
I wonder how that conversation went when she got back with him.
I know. It's like, yeah, I would have.
You wouldn't have been happy.
No. Yeah. It's happened twice, right?
Well, let's just say Abraham certainly, I mean, he's a legend because, again, it's complicated. He did great things.
Yeah.
His faith was unbelievable. God would tell him to do something, he would do it. All the way down to, taking the life of his own son, he was willing to.
Right.
Book of Hebrews puts him in the Hall of Faith, so certainly he's worthy of all of that. But on the flip side, I think, Brittany, the New Testament says that the Old Testament is given to us as an example so that we can see these were real people.
Right.
Living real lives. And then we get to Isaac and Rebecca. They can't have kids. They pray for kids. God blesses her with twins. Surprise, right?
Yep.
But he tells them in the beginning, he says, here's my plan. Your family's going to be different. Your younger kid, the younger one, is going to be the one that rules. He's the one, not the older. That's not how the ancient world worked. And so, but what happens is we see favoritism. Talk to me about that, Brittany, because you see Isaac and Rebecca choose a kid they like the best, and they do not hide it.
Yeah. I mean, we obviously have an only child, so he's our favorite. But yeah, no, what was the line you said about you can appreciate the differences, but don't, what was it?
Yeah, well, I think I might have said celebrate the distinctives of your kids without choosing one you like better.
Yeah.
And but they were so obvious with it that the Bible records it for us.
Right. Yeah.
What do you think happens to, I know that you've not experienced it firsthand because you have one child, but you grew up in a house with a bunch of kids.
Yeah, I'm the oldest of 4, and so
were your parents pretty good about keeping it even-handed or not?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
We joke that
you had awesome parents.
Oh yeah, I have great parents, and so we joke about the favorites, and we've had different rankings over the years. So I gave them the first grandchild, and so that was really good.
That put you way up there.
Yes, and then my sister basically is the kindest person ever. I've never been in that category. but so she's trumped me somewhat.
Yeah, just because she's nice.
Yeah, just because she's nice.
Do you think she's faking? Is it fake?
I think it's real and it's annoying, and then my younger brother, he's the baby, so he gets a lot of favoritism.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, the third one.
We could argue that Josh is the one.
I don't think he's ever been.
He's not been at the top.
Number one. Yeah.
If he hears this podcast, will it be hurtful?
Nah, he knows.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I've always loved your siblings. All I knew all you guys, and you are hilarious. So your parents, though. What's cool about that is you guys make it a joke because it probably isn't real.
My mom, it makes her so mad
much
when we joke and say that anyone's her favorite.
But this wasn't a joke in this family.
Right.
And you can see, Jacob and Esau have massive problems over this.
Yeah.
They're competitive with each other, and it is ripping the family apart. And it gets to the point, where we see that Jacob, Esau and Jacob are being driven by their appetites.
Right.
Esau sells the most precious thing in his life for a bowl of soup, just blew us away. And TC and I talked about that a little bit on the podcast last week. But this week, we saw that it came time for old Isaac to bless the son that was supposed to, be the one to rule the family. And we see Isaac and Rebekah both do two things. It's very telling. Isaac, it would be hard to believe that he didn't know what God told Rebekah.
Right.
In that world, you would have told your husband.
Right.
He knew what God had decided, and he didn't like it.
Yeah.
Esau was his boy. So he's like, I'm going to bless Esau. I don't care what anyone says.
Yeah.
So you've got Isaac, who does not like God's plan, and then you've got Rebekah, who hears him say this, and she doesn't trust that God can actually get his plan done.
Right.
So she feels like she's got to intervene, and she's willing to go to all the lengths to lie and cheat, and of course teaching Jacob to do that. And so we end up watching this family implode right in front of us, right?
Right.
Okay, so we call that like a moment. You could go back and look at this moment and go, this destroyed in many ways this family for a long time. And I know you see moments. You see families go through stuff. Brittany, tell me this. What would you say to a family, and some may be listening right now, where the bad thing hadn't happened yet, but they're on the road to it?
Yeah.
If they stay where they are right now and keep doing what they're doing, it's headed to a bad place. What are some things that you would say to them from your experience to not end up in that bad place? Why should they pump the brakes, be willing to raise their hand and go, we're going to a bad place here if we don't change direction?
Yeah. I think that we do have to pause and pump those brakes, because it's going to affect, and what comes to mind right now is just families I know that are probably about to go through a divorce. That's
Right.
what I see a lot in the families around us, unfortunately. And I think about how it's not just going to affect the parents, but how it will affect the kids.
Absolutely.
And that I think that to be able to give those parents, I'm thinking of a certain family that I'm walking through that with right now, just like how much their selfish desires is going to affect the kids, and that you've got to think about how this will stay with them forever. There was an example I was thinking of. A friend of mine, her parents got divorced young.
Okay.
And then to this day, she is dealing with a father that is in bad health, and she's dealing with the stepmom. It just, and she's 40 years old, and so it's
icky.
it doesn't just affect while they're under your roof. You're dealing with that until the very end,
Wow.
the way divorce and how that affects
Which is why
your
God
family
said
life.
he hates it.
Right.
No, we don't believe that there's no redemption.
Right.
God can redeem, and there's beautiful stories, but even in those situations, you have got to run to God
Yeah.
and let him start retelling the story.
Right. Like that in that moment, if a family makes that decision, and even if, it's in a way biblically okay, to do that for one of the spouses, just knowing that that goes to the grave, with these kids. And so I'm just thinking in moments in that way of
Sure.
of what I'm seeing right now.
Because they really aren't moments. It's like we think it's a moment. It becomes the
it's
ripple effect goes on and on.
Right.
My mom, still to this day, but certainly throughout her life dealt with the after effects of a really, really bad
Mhm.
home situation and a bad divorce, and it just went really bad. And so, my mother lived with friends while
Mhm.
she was 14 and 15 years
Mhm.
old, just house to house to house, because home was exploding, literally. And of course, she dealt with all of that and still does. And I'm proud of her for overcoming so
Right.
much of it to be who she's become. But it was hard.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. So when we look at Rebecca and Isaac and how they handled God's plan, because Rebecca again is scared that God needs her help, and he did not. It didn't have to. She didn't have to go lie to Isaac.
Right.
She didn't have to get Jacob to. Like, it could have gone differently. I think there's a lack of spiritual leadership in that house. I want to know
Yeah.
why Isaac, being a patriarch, did not lead better.
Right.
Did not raise the hand and go, "Hey, we're not doing this." So tell me why it's important in your opinion, and you're coming at this from, we hear guys talk about it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Why do you think a spiritual father, right? Why do you think men, being the men God has created them to be and called them to be, in particular in their homes, is important? Because I know your husband, Jonathan, leads
Right.
and spiritually leads, and it's so important to him. Of course, y'all do it together, but
Right.
you guys have really model that well. And your dad did it.
Right.
Your
Right.
dad was a spiritual leader. So, Brittany, why is that so important?
Well, yeah. I mean, your children see it, and there's just something about a father that can set the tone of the household of
Oh, I love that.
what we value.
What do you mean by that? Set the tone.
Just like me growing up, like I can still remember seeing my dad sit at the kitchen table reading his Bible every morning.
Man,
Like
I
that
love
was
that.
something he valued.
What a legacy.
And I can see that picture. And so,
So you would it was almost like you would catch him doing it.
oh, yeah.
It was like, oh,
Most
there's dad
definitely.
reading his. What did that do to you? I mean, because
It,
you're a student of the Word. You're
Yeah.
very committed to the Bible. And so you're saying that kind of set you up, huh?
it really did. And my mom did it in a different way. I know that some people are nighttime readers. And so, but like, it was just like, even before my dad went into ministry, like church was important.
Yes.
It was not a if we can. It was what we did. And I went to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, and I never felt that I was like that I was bitter about it or didn't like it. And it was nothing near the programmings we have today in churches, but it was just like, that's what you do. And it wasn't a force, but it set the tone of, this is what we value.
Mm.
This is what we're going to do and prioritize. We played some sports, but my goodness, that never affected
Right.
ever, I can say, in our life.
Oh, it's such a different world.
Attendance, right.
Yeah, it's a battle.
And so I think with that model, I mean, just that showed what they value. And my mom, of course, just, followed his leadership in that way. And Jonathan and I try and do that as well, as far as like, I mean, even if, not being on staff, like if like Sunday, like it's,
Oh, yeah.
and I think that is just from my upbringing, like
Right.
that church is something that is not a, if we can
Right.
kind of.
Yeah, you got to figure it out.
Right.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so then they're showing all this favoritism, right? To, Isaac clearly loves Esau the most and lets him know it. Rebecca loves Jacob the most. And it's really kind of selfish on both of their parts.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, they're not leading. Yeah, they're not leading their
Mhm.
kids. And I think it does show how important it is for both the mom and dad to, grow up and be mature and lead your
Yes.
family.
Well, the Bible tells us Isaac loved Esau because he brought him food all the time.
Yeah.
He loved that.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's parents that, love
Something about a kid, they're drawn to that
Yep.
kid for some reason.
Yep. They're exactly.
And and so once again we see the fact that it's unhealthy and it's going to affect these kids. But one thing that Isaac had a problem with is I don't think he liked God's plan. He knew what God wanted, and I think we have more information about God's plans than Isaac did. There wasn't a Bible yet. There wasn't the Pentateuch yet. He didn't have the Old Testament, none of that. They're getting direct revelation from God, and so we have the Bible front to back.
Yeah.
We have all of God's plans for us. He's given them to us. Give me an example, Brittany, in your life, or maybe you've watched it in others, of times where people just, they know what God wants them to do and they just don't want to. They don't like it. They don't
Mm.
like that plan. Maybe you've struggled with it before, or maybe you've seen others struggle with it.
I think right now I see just a younger generation of I feel like I see a calling on their life for ministry, and it's like they don't necessarily like it because they're already like, oh, I'm taking these classes because I want to do this and be this, and I've already got this plan. And so I see it kind of like just recently with some younger, like college age students that I've tried to mentor, just that like, because it's something that they've thought and planned since they were in high school, that's how it's supposed to be. I think that it's not even that they're running from it, but it's like they don't want to fully embrace it.
Mm-hmm. And you think you see that God probably has some plans for them that are different than what they've always thought?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yep.
You think they're afraid of the potential sacrifice of it that it'll require? What do you think's going on there?
I think they're afraid of it changing what they thought was their plan and could disappoint parents. Obviously, money's already gone into certain college classes, and I think, so
Interesting.
that's a more recent example I've seen.
Have you ever dealt with it in your life? Has there ever been a time where you thought, I see what God's doing here and I don't like it? I don't think I like it yet. You ever had one of those?
Goodness. I think for me, I don't know that it's happened yet. I don't know.
I remember when, just going into your story and how we experienced it here at the church, because you're such a major part of what we're doing. And it was a time of high growth, and it feels like it always is. And you had to take some time away.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we could. Yeah.
Right.
That would be.
That was hard because you came to the conclusion you and Jonathan did together.
Oh.
And, we were all wanting to, of course, we would support that, but we're all going, oh, man. So it was kind of hard for all of us,
Yeah. Yeah. That was.
A year, right?
Yeah. After I had Ethan, I was fully planning to come back and work. And after the 6 weeks, it was like, I am not in a mental state at all to do anything in a working
and
role.
You've been so open about that because you want to help others.
Oh yeah, I'm an open book about
Right.
that. And so it was horrific because we moved here to serve at this church, and then I'm saying, okay, I've got to quit. I didn't know what was to come, and so I would say that I didn't like that plan,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't have a chance to run from it because it was all I could do to survive.
Yeah, right.
But I would say that I did not like that plan, and it ended up being really great for many reasons. Not only did I get a chance to spend a year at home with Ethan, that turned out to be really
huge.
sweet. It was hard still, but
Sure.
but also like it really did. I don't know if you saw it this way, but it opened up some ways for growth even in our staff for that time, because I was wearing all those hats, and it opened up like, okay, now we need someone to take small groups.
That's right.
Let's get someone on connections,
Mhm.
team. And so it really did it forced the staff to grow and break that up. And so I saw how God, used that. And
But it was hard to trust him in the middle of it, I'm sure.
it was that whole time of just postpartum and dealing with the anxiety that I deal with on a daily basis still.
Yeah.
It is hard to trust, but I know that it's in my life for a reason, but it's very, very difficult.
I've always found it, because I think one of the unique gifts you bring to the body of Christ and our local body here is, of course, all the ministry you do and all you're doing with families and kids. But you've said it over and over again. I mean, you've shot videos on this, you've shot podcasts. Because most people, Brittany, don't want to live like that, to let people in.
Mm-hmm.
And something in you, in particular in this issue that you've dealt with, you've got this heart that you just want to to let people know that, because I think you believe there's people out there dealing with the same thing, and people
Sure.
hide.
Yeah.
And they just hide from it and don't want anyone to know. And you've been willing to just put that out there. And did God do that? Or is it just your natural personality? Or was there something that you felt like God's going to use this?
Yeah, I think part of it is my personality kind of being an open book and not super private, but also I would say, and I may have shared it on here, I'm not sure, but when it was during COVID, we were kind of at this pivotal point where like, okay, well, because of what I deal with my mental health, we probably won't have another kid. That's why, honestly, we have one child, and I think it's best for my mental sake. But when we were talking about, okay, there has to kind of be the finality, like we're not going to have any more kids, and how am I going to continue to deal with this mental anguish? I mean, that's what I call it daily. I really did have like just this time where I realized that, because I've talked about like the thorn in my flesh, like this is it. This is the thorn in my flesh for sure, that God's using. And I remember thinking that, okay, if this is how it's going to be, and he's not taking this away, and I'm supposed to live with this every day for the rest of my life, it was like I had to accept it.
Okay.
And I did, and asked God to show me how he wants to use it. And so it just became a way for me to be like, if I'm going to be on medication and in therapy for the rest of my life, okay.
Wow.
And
was that a turning point?
It was a turning point, and just a mental shift of acceptance and not having a goal of, I'm going to try and get off this medicine one day, just acceptance of what God, that he's put it in my life, and he's put it in my life for a reason. And there's been, of course, countless ways that I've been able to help people.
Oh my gosh.
Just to talk through, just to let everyone know that.
Well, we've watched God use
crazy.
it. Yeah, God's used you in so many ways, but I think this is a very unique way that he has used you in our local body and maybe beyond. We don't know. But we don't know who gets the podcast and who doesn't.
Right.
And maybe in heaven one day you're going to have some people look at you and go, thank you so much for.
I'm the token anxiety girl.
Yeah. But
it's okay though.
But you look at Isaac though, and it's like Isaac and Rebekah just could not do what you did. Neither one of them could just go, you know what, God, you've said what you're going to do, and we've got to trust you with this. And it made Isaac kind of go against God. I'm going to bless Esau anyway. And it made Rebekah blow the family up with this crazy plan. Let's kill a goat and wrap Jacob in it. And these are grown men.
Yeah, right.
And at no point, though, what's interesting to me, because we get to see it, we get to see the whole thing implode. And you've got all of these moments, though, that it could have gone differently.
Sure.
Every time I would read through the story preparing for this weekend message, I would see that, Rebekah could have stopped. And if you read it, you see that Jacob tried to at first. Jacob goes, Mom, whoa.
Right.
This might not go well. And she pushes him on across the line. And I just wonder, in our lives, we talked about green light, red light, and it's kind of like the McConaughey book, whatever. So, but we said God gives us red lights, and they're always good.
Yeah.
We don't like them all the time.
Yeah.
We don't have to understand them.
Right.
But if he goes red on us, we need to stop.
Right.
Period. And Jacob, I think, knew this was a red light. That's why he said that. He looks at his mom in the story. Mom, I don't know if this is going to go well. And she talks him into believing that what God said was a red light was actually a green light. And it is the thing that, she's never going to see him again. So her favorite son, she doesn't realize the choices she's making is going to separate her from him forever. He's got to run.
She couldn't see the big picture of how it affects.
Yeah.
Just the ripple effect of.
Yes. We make little momentary decisions that may be huge, good and bad, right?
Yeah.
And so we overestimate what we can do in a moment, underestimate the long-term consequences of it, I think. And so, when it comes to trusting God with his plans, what have been, because we're talking to people through this podcast right now that probably are dealing with that. There's stuff going on in their lives, and it's hard for them to just trust God's word. And as Charles Stanley, great preacher, used to say, one of his lines was, just obey God and trust him with the outcomes. If he says do it, do it. If you don't understand it, it doesn't matter. You don't have to understand it. Just do it. Trust him with the outcomes. That's hard. What are some ways you have done that in your life? What are some things that have helped you? Maybe 2 or 3 things that have helped you become a person that when God gives you a red light, you stop. When he gives you a green light, you blow through it. You're like, okay, you said yes, I'm going. But if he says stop, you stop. How have you developed that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that a couple of those red lights would have been that moment where, okay, we're done having children. I need to take the year off from work. I think that, so those were big for me.
Okay.
But then when I got the green light, like it was just perfect timing because I came back on staff to work with preschool ministry, and I was a new mom that was in that stage of life, and it wasn't my necessarily favorite age group because I have a call in my life for elementary age, but it was definitely what I was supposed to do in that season. And so I think that when we go through things that are really hard to trust God with, like mine is the big thing with anxiety. I think that you have to ask God, what are you trying to show me through this? Because it's happening for a reason. And I think like if Rebecca would have just stopped and paused, like you said, if she just paused.
Pump the brakes.
Yes, pump the brakes and just say, okay, and talk to God and just wait a few minutes. Give it a minute. Let it breathe a minute.
Oh, I love that.
Before you.
Because we rush, don't we? We just rush through things.
Yeah. Just let it breathe and take a minute. Go outside and
take a walk, Rebecca.
Right. Go.
Because it could have gone differently.
Yeah.
Like literally, if any one of them, and they're all adults now.
Right.
And I looked at it over and over again. I'm like, Rebecca, if she just would have said, this is getting crazy.
Yeah.
She didn't even attempt to talk to Isaac about it. She could have gone into Isaac instead of lying to him and reminded him, hey, Isaac, remember, that's not God's plan.
Yeah.
That's not what God told me.
Yeah.
And it could have changed. Or what if Esau, instead of blaming, everybody starts playing the blame game. And I kind of want to, that's where I want to land today, is the final piece of this past weekend's passage was the whole family playing the blame game.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's everybody else's fault, and no one will own anything.
Yeah.
So Esau, he's all mad at Jacob. He gave that birthright away.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to mention that.
Yeah.
And so, he won't own his part to play in it. Isaac is also blaming Jacob. He tricked me, he deceived me. Well, Isaac, you knew the plan. Yeah. So why aren't you leading your family? Yeah. You're the one that raised them. Yeah. Rebecca will not own hers. And we see at the end, I thought it was so interesting. That's why I put it in there. Esau had married these 2 Hittite women, which was wrong. They didn't believe the way he believed. But in the end, instead of Rebecca owning that she caused a lot of this, she goes back to her disdain for those girls. Yeah. She's like, these Hittite women, they had nothing to do with it.
Nothing to do with that whole situation.
Total deflection.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So let's talk about that. In situations you've been in, why is it so important that we all own our part?
My goodness. Yeah. It's so freeing too, just to own it. Like own it. And if there's something you need to, like apologize to someone for, it's biblical. Like it's being truthful. It's being Christ-like. Like own it and move on. It so much can be saved within relationships. I think if people can just not be stubborn and be like, I was wrong here. I'm sorry. Can we move on? Like, can you just think about all the people that it's just a simple apology and my bad. And
it could have changed so much.
Yeah.
And I think that it's true in our own times, our own families and marriages.
Right.
So, Casey, you've been married now for what, 13, 14 years?
14 years.
14 years.
Yeah.
Wow. I got to officiate that wedding. We were all looking at pictures the other day. I can't believe it's been that long. So in your own home, to just for other people to kind of peer into your home, you and Jonathan doing married life, all that y'all do, how does it work? So when there's conflict inside your marriage and in your home, are y'all pretty quick to go, hey, we're off here?
Yeah,
we're off. Let's talk. Or does it take a few days? Or are y'all pretty quick to go? We got to talk about this. Kind of how do y'all do?
Yeah, well, Jonathan for sure. The way he leads is he comes from a very communicative family where they talk a lot, and it sometimes can be overkill. But he's very proactive about talking
Do
through
you think
things.
you'd rather be overkill than underkill on it,
Yeah,
though, you know?
I do. I
Yeah.
do. Well, same with the planning. I'd rather
Yeah.
be overkill than underkill. But I would
So Jonathan won't let stuff sit.
he will a little bit,
Mhm.
but for me, I don't mind conflict. I don't mind talking through it. I would much rather talk through it and have
Then let it
resolve
simmer. Yeah.
and have like closure.
It's good.
So
Yes.
I
Let's move on,
I
right?
embrace like that. I don't like to have, bad. I don't.
And you guys
bad
have,
relationships.
at least from the outside looking in, and we see it a lot, you guys seem to have a really strong, really great marriage. A lot
Yeah.
of joy, a lot of, but I think part of why is because I think one of the reasons Ethan's grown up in a strong home with strong leadership and there's a lot of joy there is because y'all don't let things just keep going down the road.
Right. Yeah. No, we don't. And we'll sit down and have conversations. And a lot of times, honestly, it has to do with because I can get into a place of spiraling with my anxiety that I can't be rational.
Okay.
And that is really hard because I can then deflect and blame it on the anxiety
Mm.
when sometimes it is me making the choice to be like, this is just because I'm in a bad place kind of thing.
So you even kind of own that at times.
Yeah.
And Jonathan is an extremely, just know he's a very rational guy,
Mm-hmm.
right? He's a, pragmatic. Here it is.
Very
so,
much. Very
so it's
much.
like God knew what he was
Almost just like, yeah, it's like he knew. But yeah, there was an instance recently where I was really struggling with just some triggers that caused me to spiral and go to a place that is not rational.
doing. Mm-hmm.
And he is able to stop and talk me through things and talk about what's true
Mm-hmm.
and to keep me from going off the deep end. So yeah, I think that's yeah, we talk through things like that's just something that
It's just part of your marriage.
yeah.
And that's awesome. Rebecca and Isaac obviously did not.
I don't think they did much.
No.
Nope.
No one's talking to each other here.
Yeah.
And what ends up happening, and just for everybody listening today, we kind of want to land the plane there because whatever your stuff is, Brittany's really open book about what she deals with and just humans. We're all humans, and you've got it too, whoever's listening right now. But if you play the blame game the way this family in the Old Testament did, no one will own it. And they all had a part to play. Isaac was a weak spiritual leader. He had picked a favorite son. Esau was driven by his appetites. Jacob would not stand up to his mom because they were so close. And the mom is coming up with crazy plans that are going to destroy the family. All four of them have a part to play, and not one of them will own it.
Right.
No one will raise their hand.
Right.
And so today, I think what we're saying is own your part in whatever's going on and be the one that pumps the brakes. Be the one that says, let's take a breath here. What are we doing? Where are we headed here? That's huge. And Brittany, thank you and Jonathan for being a couple in our church that are willing to let people in a little bit. Y'all have both been willing to do that for the good of others and also for modeling that. Not perfectly, none of us are, but for you guys modeling, man, a godly marriage and walking through tough stuff together.
Yeah.
And he's not here right now. I need to get him on the podcast. But Jonathan, being taking that spiritual leadership role so seriously in his home,
Right.
is huge.
And Jacob and Esau were adults at this point, but if you're dealing with something that you just need to own, and handle that could affect the trajectory of your family, and you have kids that aren't adults. I mean, if they're under your roof and they're your kids,
It's huge.
You gotta lead. You gotta lead them first. With your marriage, you've got to get that right, be on the same page, and they're watching.
Oh yeah,
They're watching every bit of it, and
100%.
So own it and lead your household. That's what I would say.
I love it. Thank you so much. Thanks for being on the podcast. It's always good because there's an authenticity with you. You're going to bring the real stuff every time.
Yep, this is me.
I love it. And hey, if you're listening out there, the thing you're seeing, not only from hearing us talk, but also you look at the people in the Bible, dysfunction and being human is a part of this game, y'all. We all have it. We all deal with it. Let's own it and let's take it to the God who, well, loves to do great things through broken people and broken families. And whatever your broken story is, I promise you it's not too broken for God to use it, redeem it, and do great things. And that's what this is all about. And so thank you for joining us today. We hope you will join us at one of our campuses. The weekend starts on Thursdays at Three Circle Church. So at our Fairhope campus, it'll kick off Thursday night. We'll go another week into the story of Jacob. You don't want to miss it because this week we're gonna see an amazing moment. And it's a moment that's going to start moving Jacob from being a man who runs from God closer to becoming a man who runs for God. And so it's going to be an amazing weekend at all of our campuses and online. And we hope this podcast today will bless you in some way, stir your affection for Jesus, and also give you hope that whatever you're facing, God can do great things in and through you as well. And that is, my friends, the message of this glorious gospel that we love so much, that our Redeemer really does keep his promises, and he can use us and redeem our broken places. So thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next time right here at the Three Circle Podcast.